So should we start with the first agenda, which is the SciPy stuff? And Liam, do you want to go on what you've done so far, or not done, or what do you need help with?
I can talk about what I've not done. That's easy.
Okay.
Yeah, so I saw in the notes that it's written down as the 9th, but I think it's the 16th for tutorials. Is that someone help confirm that for me?
I'm pretty sure the 16th is what it said on the website. I think the 9th was something different.
Yeah, so I know we have this list of sort of materials to submit, and looking at that list. So just for everyone's sake, I'm just going to read this off the Slack. It's the bio of presenter and team members. It's a list of prerequisite skills for attendees, a description of the tutorial, and then an outline of tutorial content, and installation instructions, and essentially anything else that you have so far for said tutorial. And yeah, so it's due, I guess, a week from this coming Tuesday. I haven't really started much on it, but I also sort of we have a bit of a head start with some of the Roses material. So there's discussion in the Slack about, we obviously we don't want it to be seismology focused, but in fact, a lot of that material that I have is not necessarily seismology focused anyhow. So I think there should be some good crossover, with some maybe expansion of that material. And Roses was geared towards graduate students, sort of like mid to upper level graduate students who had elementary Python proficiency. That was sort of like where we were at. And so I think in terms of the level that we're coming at with the tutorials, I think that should be pretty transferable. I just think maybe expanding the topics. For example, we didn't really cover like Cartesian plotting too much, in the Roses content, and that is something that folks might want. Of course, also the PyGMT has morphed since the summer, which is great, and so there's probably things we want to include, that are newer. But I'm looking at sort of what is required here, and it really seems like the outline is the main sort of thing where we'd want maybe to bounce particular ideas off of folks. I mean, I think we should collaboratively edit the whole thing, but especially this outline. And that might be where other folks can chime in with their past experiences doing this sort of thing. But I guess I didn't totally basically. How long are they? Are they a day, 1 full day, 2 full days, or less, more?
I
I haven't
thought
done this
tutorials
before.
were geared for like 3 to 4 hours, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay, sweet, cool, that's reasonable. Yeah, so I think all in all, like I'll have time to work on it this week. I was planning on maybe putting in some work at this weekend to sort of get the basics down, and it seemed like having a repository, just to throw stuff into, sort of throw some some markdown files into to start would be useful. I don't know. Is there such thing as like private organization repositories? It doesn't really need to be private, but it could be public as well. Start off, but I was thinking, some sort of repository in the GMT org would be a good start, and I could sort of push a couple of these more simple README documents, and folks could just
Yeah, are they just going to be markdown documents, or are you thinking of like Jupyter notebooks as well?
There'll definitely be Jupyter notebooks, but just for some of these that are like the bio and whatnot, those could be marked down. Yeah, so I already have 2 Jupyter notebooks from Roses, because Roses was designed to be like a lecture combined with a lecture notebook. So like we're gonna walk through this together, and we're all gonna do these commands, and then like a lab notebook, which had a bit more of a code it yourself vibe. So there are 2 notebooks already in existence, but we'd want to sort of expand those. And those are already publicly available, so I could just start by pushing those up there, and send a link in the chat to. This is the Roses Talk website, and if you go and you say download resource files, those are the 2 Jupyter notebooks. So yeah, there would certainly be more than just markdown. I think it'd be nice to sort of have it seems like they want as much content as you have available by the 16th.
Yeah, many of the, at least some applications are available publicly, right? Because they provided those examples. So I think that it should generally be fine to set it up as a public repo. And if there's any sort of personal information, like contact for the organizers that might not already be in all of our GitHub commits, we can add that afterwards and just not have it in the public version. I can set up, you know, an empty repository if that's needed. I'm not really sure. I know Weiji had the post about the community structure on GitHub, and it's not really clear to me exactly what groups do what. But if you need, I can do that.
Yeah, if someone wouldn't mind setting up the repo wherever it needs to go, I don't know if I do it.
I'm pretty sure you should be able to start a new repo, Liam, because I did one for the Phosphor-G one, and yeah,
and that would
you
just
should have permissions to do that.
Okay, and that would just be under the generic mapping tools organization,
Umbrella,
right?
Organization. Okay.
I just want to mention something for context for Liam mentioned the Slack channel a couple times, and if anyone's not aware, there's the contributing markdown file in the PyGMT repo, and that has a list of onboarding steps if you want to become a developer, and getting added to that Slack workspace is one of those steps, just so everyone's on the same page about what communications we're talking about here.
Has someone else done a SciPy tutorial before? Like I know PyGMT has done like a talk, like Leo did that talk, but
yeah. So Leo's done a talk, and his talk is on YouTube, but I don't think he did like a full tutorial. So it would be like I've done the in-person tutorial for Phosphor-G 2 years ago, but that wasn't recorded. And you've done yours in Roses, but I think that's pretty much it.
I was just wondering,
like some GMT, GMT specific ones, but not for PyGMT.
I was just curious, like even beyond the realm of GMT, if folks had for other projects, like or like attended, like I went to my first SciPy last summer. That's sort of my extent of my involvement with SciPy. I was wondering if folks like had any sort of, could talk about their experiences doing SciPy, like maybe even participating in SciPy tutorials, like what it generally is like. I don't know. Trying to get some like picture in my head.
I haven't either. I think that there are some that are available, so at least we can look through their materials, and I can try to pull. I don't remember exactly where I saw those, but I could try to post some in that Slack channel so that we can use a successful model without inventing everything from scratch.
Yeah, I saw someone posted. Yeah, they have some submissions, which is nice.
So it seems like the action items here are to set up a repository, and we can use the issues or discussions in that for maybe Liam to tell us all what to do to add.
Yeah, in summary, I'm aware of the deadline, and I'll have time to work on it, and I'm not too concerned. So hopefully there'll be some content available for review quite soon. And I'll ping folks on Slack for stuff, but I'm happy to lead the development of materials. So definitely speak up if you want to change the direction of stuff.
Cool.
This is
okay.
sorry. I wanted to mention this is a little bit separate from tutorials, but it's motivated for building the developer community. So in the NASA proposal, we did include developer workshops for PyGMT, and hopefully that will get funded. As one of those, in part of the revision process, Leo recommended reaching out to the Earth Science Women's Network about advertising developer workshops. And so I have a meeting set up with them in a couple weeks to go over how we could partner with them to try to get some inclusive developer workshops set up for PyGMT and or GMT. And so I don't think we have to have any action items for that right now, but I just wanted to let you all know so we can have a conversation about decisions that need to be made about what should go into developer workshops and what the timing should be before that happens.
That's great. I mean, I can think of folks like even in my institution who would be interested in something like that, like folks that would never touch C code, but like Python development, and it's sort of like, especially if they have some vested interest in wrapping a certain module, like totally, like Geodesy graduate students who like want to use Python and make like maps, totally.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And there's a plan from the NSF side of things to have GMT developer workshops. I think that you're definitely right that PyGMT might be an easier avenue to pursue. So it might be something that's a little bit better to do first.
Cool. Could you just repeat? It was for the, what was the community group you mentioned, Megan? The Women Geospatial.
It's the Earth Science Women's Network, and they've hosted professional events before, but more along the lines of writing successful proposals. So this will be a little bit different, and I think it would be great to reach out to other organizations that have missions related to promoting diversity. In the process of writing this proposal and before, I became aware of some pretty sad statistics about the diversity of GitHub contributors. And I think that actively reaching out through communities is one way to, amongst enforcing our code of conduct and everything else is one way that we can try to make sure that we have a broad group of people in our developer workshops.
Oh, that's very good. Workshops. Yep. Right. And was there anything else from the NASA proposal? When are we meant to hear back from them?
Usually they try to get a response within 3 to 6 months. It's possible everything might be a bit slower because of COVID. And the other PyGMT relevant components of that are that we put in funding for a technical writer for half-time for 2 years. And I would imagine that person could contribute to PyGMT, GMT MATLAB in addition to core GMT. So in some ways there's a little bit less complexity in PyGMT's documentation because in some ways it's easier to build something from scratch than to rebuild it. But I think there's a lot that person, if funded, could contribute to both packages.
Sorry.
I was just going to say that the technical writer, that like the purpose of that role is documentation and like tutorials and stuff, or is that? Yeah, what's the purpose?
Yeah, the specific objectives that were included in the proposal included developing Danielle Prasinda's documentation structure for GMT, which would be the addition of how-to guides and more beginner-focused tutorials that doesn't necessarily have quite so much programmatic explanation in it. And then adding repeatable examples that rely on the remote files and Jupyter Hub environment so that there's no installation or separate downloading of files required for repeatability. And then we expect that that person could also contribute to some of the software development if they were to so choose, because we want to make this a really attractive position for recruiting someone. And I think it's definitely important to cater to their professional goals. So if they want to have some more software development in addition to documentation development, we would encourage that. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. How about we move on to the next PyGMT release? Where should we start? So we've got about 30 pull requests open now on PyGMT. We've just wrapped up the inset one from Will. Woohoo! Which is very happy to see that. I think it's been a long time coming. And we're doing quite a bit of work moving lots of modules into the source folder. So that includes the plotting modules like fig.basemap to fig.legend, logo, whatever. That's all gonna like live on its own file right now, rather than in baseplotting.py, which was getting to like 2,000, 3,000 lines of code. So right now they're just going to be single files, one GMT command. So grid image, grid contour, whatever. And Dong is also moving the non-plotting modules from into the same source folder. So things like grid info, what's another one? Block median, surface, those sort of like data processing ones. And the idea is sort of that when we wrap a new module going forward, they'll be in just one single file rather than like in sort of, before we sort of had to like categorize everything into like, was this working on grids or was this working on tables or something? But with 100 or so GMT modules, it got a bit chaotic. So we're just gonna put every module into its own single file right now, with some exceptions. I think with like the subplot, I was thinking of having maybe like 2 modules in one file, but that's okay. But yeah, do you guys, Will or Dong, what are sort of your plans, I guess, for like the next week? I kind of want to release this maybe mid-Feb, if possible.
Do we want to release 0.30 before GMT 6.2 or after?
Yeah. I'll try to release it before 6.2 if possible. Because 6.2 might take, I would think, end of Feb soonest. Traditionally, it's been late by a month from.
I think it might already be late by a month though, so I'm not sure if we've already hit that.
Just speaking from experience since the past 2 years, maybe things have changed. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to
but
have us planning on it being released beforehand, but then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, we're releasing today." We're like, "Oh shit, we didn't do it in time." So
Can I ask you a
probably
question?
honor the February 15th, if I remember correctly, but.
I was wondering for the release of PyGMT, is the dependency on GMT fixed, or does it, if it's released 0.3.0 and then 6.2 is released, will 0.3.0 start using that, or will it be fixed on 6.1 until 0.4.0 is released?
So on that thing, PyGMT does have a bit of separation with GMT. So technically you could use like GMT 6.0 on like some PyGMT versions. But there's been some bugs before which which was discovered through developing PyGMT. And so we've sort of set the current release, which is PyGMT 0.2.1, to require at least GMT 6.1. My thought is that with PyGMT v 0.3, which we're trying to release, that it should sort of work between GMT 6.1 or GMT 6.2. That should be, so it doesn't really matter what you install. But to fix some bugs, you might need to install the newer version rather than the older version. We actually have tests running on both GMT 6.1 and the GMT development branch. So we can sort of catch like if there's anything in GMT that breaks PyGMT, and there's been a few, but for like the probably like 99%, maybe 95% of most functions, they should work, whether you're using GMT 6.1 or the upcoming 6.2. It's only in like a few rare cases where you would have like something that's broken. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious because this branch that Paul and I are working on merging shortly will actually affect PyGMT, I think, more than most new features, because it changes the defaults for modern mode, and PyGMT only uses modern mode. So it's possible that if 0.3 were released and then 6.2 were released a week later, it might be a little bit surprising for people if their plots change at that point versus if they were released in relatively close temporal proximity to each other. So it's just one factor.
Yeah, that's the GMT team's stuff you're working on? Is that right?
Yeah, the main change that is, I think, relevant for PyGMT is that there's default auto scaling for pretty much all of the frame parameters, such that if you increase the size of your plot, the map frame for fancy will change in thickness and the font sizes will change accordingly.
Okay, but I think that's just more like a visual. So the figures would sort of change, but like most of the, yeah.
Like the code would run, but the thing that the output that PyGMT users would see would look different from what they were seeing previously. Is that sort of the? Yeah,
definitely. We do not want to cause any code to not run, and I'm going to test run PyGMT's tests and documentation on this branch before it gets merged in, so that it's an extra level of certainty that it's not going to break anything, but it will change how things look, not necessarily any processing functions or anything like that.
Okay. Yeah, I think like we're definitely going to break some tests, but from the user point of view, they can still like choose to install GMT 6.1 or 6.2 to get the behavior they want. Like, ideally, it shouldn't, like from the user point of view, it shouldn't matter too much what figure they're getting. They'll either have like a classic looking plot or a modern looking plot. But yeah, for the developers, we might have like hundreds of tests to update.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that 2 days before you're planning on releasing.
So are we thinking if it's going to break all the tests by having different GMT defaults, are we just thinking to kind of change everything to the check figures equal type testing?
Yeah, in GMT, we're updating all the PostScript files.
Sorry, I meant for the PyGMT test, because a lot of them use the matplotlib image compare, and then the newer ones use check figures equal.
Yeah, that's going to be a big job, and which is why we should just release v 0.3 as soon as possible.
Okay, and then just have
probably
0.4
next
be the
week.
one that we have to update all of our tests.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, but from the user point of view, it shouldn't.
I feel like I should say sorry
Okay.
at this point.
No. It's we know it's coming. It's it's just a matter of like, yeah, when it happens and what happens.
Will, can you explain what the difference is between the image compare and the check figures equal? Is there
Yeah,
any?
so I can't. It was explained to me by Dong Dong already. So sorry if I bastardized it. So the way that testing was previously done, you generated the actual image that you would expect as a kind of like the ideal outcome, and then you would save it in I forget what it's called, but like the examples folder, test folder, and then what GMT will do is, or PyGMT, the test, it will create an image and then compare it to that. But then the reason we've been getting away from it is there were just like whenever you clone the repository, it just had a lot of figures that you all of a sudden had to download as well. So check figures equal does a comparison. It creates two figures at once and does a comparison between the two. So it's, I
Nice.
think, as far as I understand, it's a little bit of a slower test, but at least it doesn't involve having a large number of static files that you have to save to compare to.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah, and the benefit with that, in the case of like the GMT teams, is we're checking that PyGMT works with. So it's like a rolling sort of test rather than like a static one. So if GMT were to change, I don't know, from their default from fancy frames to modern frames or like an XKCD frame, that doesn't matter too much from the PyGMT side because we're testing. We're testing against like a moving or rolling target. So yeah, but that's gonna take a bit of time to update every test. But,
It seems
yeah, we can do that one at a time.
I just want to check
Yep,
that
go
there's
on.
no modules that haven't been started wrapping that should be included in 0.3. Do you think there's any really big gaps in what would be helpful to have?
I'll speak from my point of view because I've been trying to wrap the subplots one for probably more than a year now, and we're getting close on that API. But there's also a few things like the rows modules being wrapped, solar as well, and
Grid to CPT.
are they? Yeah. Oh yeah, grid to CPT. I think grid to CPT might be a good one to have for 0.3 if possible.
What's the status on like subplot? So I'm looking at the second pull request, the latest and greatest with the context managers. What's this? What are we?
So that's
for subplot.
Yeah, so that's working. I think we'll sort of had a comment that if we could get like a context manager, not just for the whole subplot, but also for like each individual panel or each individual, what do you call it, panel, grid, whatever, so that everything under that with context manager would belong to just one panel. And it's a bit tricky because on the GMT side of things, you can't just sort of like go in to a panel and then exit it. So it's so there's some like technical difficulties with getting that, but it would be sort of like you would have like a pretty good syntax if you could sort of have like a nested way of making a subplot, because it would just like look really clear at the moment. So with GMT proper, GMT, the C library, what it sort of does is you have like a subplot set to say the top left, and then any code below it would sort of run under that top left panel until you set it to something else. Whereas in PyGMT, we sort of want to, if we set the subplot to plot to the top left, anything below it whether it's inside or outside of the width context manager would still get plotted in the top left. So that's one of, yeah, it's a bit hard to picture it, but if you look at the code, it will be, yeah.
I looked at the in the pull request, there's the image at the very top post, and then there's like two alternative forms of syntax. One's right above that image, and the other is right below. The one below has the ax argument.
Yep, so the AX one, which is more like a matplotlib inspired. Yeah, so there's basically two ways. You can use the width context manager. So if you have like a complicated subplot where, like, say one figure has a lot of elements, you have grid image, you have codes on it, I don't know, legends, compass roses, whatever, you could use the width context manager, because like anything inside the width context manager would belong to one panel. Or if you just have like a simple one-off thing you want to plot in a subplot, you could just use the AX, which is, yeah, so you could set AX to 0, and that would be like top left plot. Yeah. So there's sort of like two ways of configuring that.
So like if you just really didn't want to use the context manager, you'd say ax equals 0, 0, and have another line saying ax equals 0, 0, and have another line saying ax equals 0, 0. But instead,
Yes.
the option would just be like use the context manager, and then you don't have to keep on specifying that. Okay.
Yeah. And
yeah,
also with the context manager, yeah, with the context manager, you can actually set like, so with subplots, you can set, say you want this to be titled A something or B something, you can set it with the context manager, but with the AX option, you wouldn't be able to set that, like the subplot title. Yeah. So there's, yeah, one's more for advanced configuration of subplots, whereas the AX one's a bit more like a one-off simple, if you don't have too many things, too many map elements going on. Yeah. So that, yeah, have to look at the code. And I've also got like a tutorial going, so have a look at those and see if, yeah, there's any things you want to improve or could be better, and then we'll try to push that out, hopefully this week, or sorry, next week, by next week. Is there anything else? I'll just go to the.
I feel like subplot is still kind of our biggest module left to wrap, and then things like solar and rows are nice to haves, but I feel like subplot and inset were our big modules we were trying to get done.
Yeah, in terms of like peers that keep on emailing me and like asking me, oh, Liam, like, is there subplot? Like, even being like, well, here's this pull request, like, I'll get back to you. Like, people, I've become sort of like the person of contact amongst our research group of like, I've got a GMT question, let's ask Liam. I'm like, we're almost there. But anecdotally, it sounds like folks are interested in that.
Yeah, this is my third try at wrapping it. So it's yeah, we're definitely trying very hard. So yeah, we'll try and prioritize that. I'll try and do that for today, or today my time, and see how things go. What else is there? There's probably like some bugs we should try and fix before the release. Dong, do you have an update on like the Windows failures?
So we find which commit breaks PyGMT, but because there are no Windows developers, so we have to rely on Paul to help us debug why the GMT changes break PyGMT. So nothing I can do.
Okay, yeah, so upstream issue.
Yeah.
And how about like the grid, the X-ray grid image? Like we actually have a few. So what's his name? Mark. marks requests on like the X-ray inputs into grid image shading. That seems
Yeah,
a bit.
that's
yeah.
also Paul's work. I believe we have opened the issue on GMT, and perhaps Paul have got this issue. Yeah, and it'll be a little difficult for us to debug.
Do you mind if it's easy enough to post that issue? I'm not really sure which one you're talking about.
Let's see.
What else is there? And Will, you're trying to finish up. What are you trying to finish up?
Been working with grid info, grid 2 CPT, and solar. I think are the only ones I have left. I mean, I'll be honest, I feel like solar, especially with Dong trying to have us incorporate date times might take me a little while. As far as like grid info and grid 2 CPT, those seem kind of much more useful for a larger audience. So something we'd want to prioritize for a 0.3.
Yep, I think definitely grid info, because that's just like wrapping the aliases.
Exactly, yeah. My eventual goal is to have an option to return kind of a dictionary for it, but I just want to wrap more of the aliases first and then kind of get that under our belts.
Yeah. Have you looked at the info pull requests? Because they were sort of like a similar thing.
Here. Are you talking about my pull request?
No, sorry, like the one for our GMT info. So like the tables, the way.
No, I don't think I have.
Okay, yeah, if you look at that one, so we sort of had a way to return like an array rather than just like a text string.
Okay, cool. That'd be much easier than having to use like regex or something like that to try to build it.
Yeah, so there's actually a bit of, there are some nasty bugs in that, but have a look at that and see if you can.
Just so I'm sorry. What?
Sorry.
Do you have? Can you link it to me just so I have it?
Yep, I'll put it on GitHub later.
Cool. Thanks.
Just wrap the aliases first, and then the returning like a dictionary or an array that can be like a separate pull request.
Okay.
Yep. Do any of the newcomers have anything questions to ask? Jason, Rashid?
No,
Yes.
not really.
Yeah, what else was there?
I added a section on documentation. So I was just thinking like where to direct. So just again going off the sort of anecdotal things, like folks will watch the Roses talk and then email me and be like, hey, I have this question about how do you make a heat map with GMT? And I'm like, well, we can, or with PyGMT, and sort of like, I guess, I'd like to be able to point them to tutorials, but also in terms of just their questions in general, like, should we, like the forum as we currently have it, like forum.genericmappingtools.org, has like the Q&A section, but I was wondering if we wanted to like have a PyGMT section or some sort of like a way to direct people's, or like an FAQ. And I guess an FAQ could be just, hey, please search the Q&A. That's one way to have an FAQ. But like someone, and I guess related to that, there's at least confusion among like sort of novice GMT users who are going directly to PyGMT, who have they have not used GMT before. They're going directly to PyGMT from Matplotlib. And like the other day, one of our like postdocs was like, I'd like to make this subplot figure. Can I have like Matplotlib figures, and then in the center, like have one of the subplots be a GMT figure? And so there's a little bit of confusion about like, I guess like how PyGMT is built on top of GMT. So I guess I don't know. That's sort of a bigger picture question, but I was just thinking about, where should we channel these questions? And does it make sense to have a more PyGMT specific sort of forum or something?
I think a PyGMT section on the GMT forum is a great idea.
Yeah, I agree. I just think it would be nice that way you're not having to mix it up with like all like the random GMT questions. It was like GMT Julia, GMT MATLAB.
Because people are going to start, using, like, they're going to learn Python. They're going to show up at, like, this is what we want, maybe, but like they're going to show up in grad school and they're going to learn PyGMT. They're not going to necessarily learn GMT, right? So it's yeah, I guess we have to start thinking about that type of person. Yeah.
So I think to start, maybe I could add a category on the forum, or two categories. I mean, one would be PyGMT questions, and one would be maybe a PyGMT showcase, similar to how we have a GMT showcase. Would anyone want something different?
I guess just like a tag, or is it called a category in Discord, discourse forum? Just having like a PyGMT tag might be enough.
So
Or we could
rather
have,
than
like, a
having a
dedicated
separate
section.
category, just have a tag.
I feel like the tags aren't super used. Like right now, I think there's like a GMT tag, but like everything is GMT.
Yeah, that's
Everything's
the only one.
GMT.
I think the tags aren't super visible, and I maybe would advocate for a category just because, like, I don't know, we could link to it from the PyGMT website, and then it's just like there's a dedicated space. And I think that could be helpful. And the showcase could also be helpful just because, like, even though the figures look the same, the source code used to create them is super different. And like, I know that it'd be super nice to direct people. It's like examples are super, super, super useful. Like, if there's a place for folks, like kind of like the gallery, where folks can just look at, okay, here's something that does kind of what I want to do. Let me port that code over and, and edit it. So I think I could see having, at least a PyGMT category, maybe having two. I mean, I get that the showcase, if it's just figures and not source code, then there's not really much of a difference. But if it was source code, then maybe that would motivate it. That makes sense.
I think we at least ask people to put in their source code with their figures in there.
Yeah, so maybe, yeah, let's start like a section or subsection then in the forum for PyGMT. And there are actually like quite a few old posts we could sort of like, if anyone has time to move into that section. That's probably like, I don't know, less than 100 posts we could like move over. And another thing I was thinking of along these lines, Liam, was to have like I know there's like some GitHub repos floating around where people have made figures for like their papers, and it would be good maybe to link to those where you have like a really fancy figure with, I don't know, 1,000 lines of code, and it would be like a good showcase. Probably not something we want to put in the gallery, but for anyone that's looking for, this exact way of making a control map or something, they could like look at that and figure it out themselves, rather than like having to make like a dedicated tutorial or something for just making very fancy contour maps. So that could be, we could put that on somewhere on the GitHub docs, the PyGMT documentation page, like a community examples or something. Yeah. So action items. Yeah, what else is there?
Related to documentation, I think the ways that in particular Will has developed some of the developer documentation will really help PyGMT going forward. So I think that's really a big improvement and should make it easier for new people to come on board and help out. So thanks to, I have not done a Git blame on that, so I don't know who started it, but thanks to whoever started it and to Will for developing that some more.
Hey, back to the original question. So when are we planning to release 0.3? It sounds like we have a few things like modules that we still want to wrap, but do we want to set a hard date kind of before the 6.2 release, or how do we want this to work out?
Who wants to be the release manager? Or by release manager, I mean opening up the issue, the release issue. I've got a conference next week, so I might be like on and off of things.
So I mean, I'm happy to take on this responsibility that I've never done before, but what does this entail? Just essentially checking off the boxes for modules who want to wrap, any outstanding bugs that we hope to get fixed, kind of what is involved in that?
So we have a release template, like an issue template. So if you open up a new issue, there should be like a release specific template, and you just fill up the box. Yeah, change the dates and stuff like that. And then we can prioritize like make a list of what we want to get in for the release. Nice to have. Have a look at some of the older release issues. So there should be one for v0.2, v0.1. And then people sort of just get assigned to different things. So someone will, make the git tag or update the change log, stuff like that.
I don't
So
want
if you want
to
to
steal
start
anyone's
that,
thunder, but I'm happy to do this.
yeah, go for it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that's good.
I guess for a date, it seems to me there are kind of three options. One is to set the date before February 15th, which is the tentative GMT release date. Option two is to set the date after the GMT release date and hope that the GMT release date is late. Or option three is to set it after February 15th and ask Paul and like post something on GMT asking that the release date specifically get moved back so that PyGMT gets released first.
Not to try to rush it, but my inclination is not to ask GMT kind of our parents to delay things. So I think it makes more sense to say like maybe either day of or day before, just so that we can at least say like we're still making it valid when GMT 6.1 is still around.
The GMT developers wants to talk about how to release GMT. I think we agree that we should like 6.2. We should make a release candidate, and then we will post have a post on the forum and say that this is a release candidate for 6.2, and anyone are welcome to test the next GMT 6.2. And it usually takes 2 weeks, and then we make the final release. But because we plan to release GMT 6.2 on February 15, so it's only 10 days, I believe, we will have a delay if we still want to make the release candidate. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna call it. That's set 12th February for PyGMT.
All right,
so that's next Friday. And we might have the weekend to fix bugs or something. But yeah, it's probably going to be delayed, but
sounds good.
Let's just set that for that, and then we can push it back or whatever. Yeah, and I agree that ideally we would be able to test the GMT release candidate. We could sort of like make a new. We've got the CondoForge GMT dev package going, so we could test it through that before we release. Yeah, but Megan, are you planning to merge that GMT teams?
Yeah, within the next
Branch this?
couple of days.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
then it should
it's
be
actually
trial by fire.
similarly subplots are what is holding us up. So we feel your pain, I guess.
Yeah, but it's definitely something I want to finish for V013.
People that want to have multiple axes, man. Some people just want it all.
Yeah, shared axes and automatic labels, and, a whole title for the subplot.
Yeah, it took GMT, what, 27 years to get to subplots, and PyGMT is doing it in 3, so I think you should be pretty proud.
Yep. That makes me feel so much better. Okay. Any last minute things? We're coming up on the hour. If not, then see you guys on Slack or GitHub. And thanks Megan for setting up the Zoom call. Oh yeah, should we make this meeting like a semi-regular sort of thing? Or just a yearly thing?
I mean, I don't think it needs to be as regular as the GMT monthly meetings, but I would say every few months at least. Definitely before every release if we're planning to have it. I mean, it seems like it was about 3 months since the last one. Is that the standard?
No, it's been 9 months. Oh, months.
I thought it was
You mean
November of 2020 was 2.1.
No, I think the last meeting we had was just me, Liam, Dong Dong, and Leo.
I think you
That
might be
was,
talking about different things. The release versus the
Oh, like the
meetings.
release. Yeah. So the release happens whenever, like every 3 months or so.
Oh yeah, my point is I think maybe we should at least try to have a discussion kind of before any sort of our releases. It doesn't have to be as regularly as our like the monthly GMTs, but at least we're having everyone kind of touch base right before any sort of release.
Yeah, maybe quarterly releases and quarterly meetings.
Okay. Cool.
And I will, yeah, this weekend I'll make that repo on the GMT org and start populating it files, and I'll update folks on Slack with the progress there. But hopefully this coming week we can sort of be reviewing that and thinking about the outline. But it's updated.
Yep.
Nice, thanks for doing that, Liam.
Okay, thanks everyone. I'm gonna end the meeting now. So
yeah, thanks for having us, Megan.
Right.
Good to see you guys.
Cool.